Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 11 quarterback starter sits for the 2019 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about some news around the National Football League as it pertains to injuries around the fantasy football landscape. And then we're going to be talking about the Week 11 quarterback matchups, who has the best and worst matchups at the position going into the week. Then talking about my top 16 quarterback rankings on the week. Before we begin today's video, let me remind all of you, if you haven't yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community. Also, do not forget to click the bell notification button to stay up to date on my latest content. Also, if you like today's video, don't forget to click the like button. Thank you very much. Hey guys, how's it going? All right, really quickly, a couple reminders. Timestamps always down in the description of the video. 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Sunday mornings, every Sunday. We do a live stream, answer questions, etc. Hopefully you'll be there. Just wanted to remind everybody that that's the case. All right, let's talk about some news right off the top before we get into quarterbacks. As of right now, a lot of the news around the National Football League is pretty much who hasn't practiced or who is not healthy and who looks like they're trending towards the direction of not playing this weekend. So that's basically the biggest news around the National Football League. So from the top, Matthew Stafford has not participated this week. Neither has Adam Thielen. They're probably both going to potentially miss this week. Adam Thielen's not too much of a surprise, but again, this issue with Matthew Stafford came on late last week and is definitely going to impact their team and the likelihood of him playing in the next couple weeks. Moving on, AJ Green, a guy that we potentially thought could have played last week, had another setback and is continuously not practicing, so he's going to miss some time, which is extremely unfortunate, especially now that John Ross is probably going to return before him, which is insane. Moving on, Alshon Jeffrey with the ankle injury has not practiced yet. The thing is, if in fact Alshon Jeffrey does not practice, who is going to be catching the ball for the Eagles on Sunday? Is it Nelson Aguilar, now that him and Deshaun Jackson will probably be out? What's the deal there? Is it going to be Zach Ertz? Typically, Bill Belichick wants to shut down top tight ends, which he typically is very good at doing. So we're gonna, we'll talk about that in the coming days, especially on Sunday morning when we go over the updated wide receiver rankings. Moving on, other pieces of information in terms of the injuries, people coming back. Darius Guice should be full go this weekend. Him and Adrian Peterson will probably split snaps. Chris Thompson has yet to come back from injury, has not practiced this week. So it's going to be between Darius Guice and Adrian Peterson on who exactly is going to be running the ball against the Jets defense, which should be a pretty easy take, to be honest. I honestly think that Darius Guice should at least be in line for a good 15 touches this week, which would be very promising. Also, David Montgomery of the Bears rolled his ankle at practice a couple days ago. So as of right now, the situation behind that, they're just kind of monitoring it and they're just making sure that he's good to go for this week. But I don't think it's too much of a setback to where he won't play. So I think he should be good against the Los Angeles Rams this week on Sunday Football. So, all right, those are the couple pieces of information I just wanted to go over. Obviously, it's all injury related. Nothing in terms of, you go pick up a guy right now, right away. It's just guys that we were already assuming were going to be out this week are kind of, continuing to trend in that direction, unfortunately. All right. Also, last piece of information, Saquon Barkley, Tyler Boyd, I mentioned them earlier in the week. These guys don't look like they're injured at all. Tyler Boyd seems to not even be on the injury report, so he's good to go. Saquon Barkley, the information that the organization that he has said is that he's good to go. The injury is not that significant, and he'll be fine by next week. And that's absolutely what we want to hear. So, all right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about some quarterback matchups going into Week 11. All right, so let's talk about this, shall we? As per usual, for the last couple weeks, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Arizona Cardinals have been the worst teams in terms of giving up points to opposing quarterbacks on a weekly basis in 6-point per passing touchdown formats. I mean, just in terms of how many touchdowns they give up per game. And so have the Raiders, interestingly enough. Even though the Raiders, they played pretty decent defense last week against Phillip Rivers, forcing him to turn over a ball many times. These are the three teams that are just really getting torched defensively from opposing quarterbacks. The Arizona Cardinals will take on Jimmy G, but will Jimmy G be good enough with the absence of a George Kittle, with the absence of an Emmanuel Sanders and Matt Breida? This offense will be hurting. This offense has been hurt up and down the lineup in terms of offense and defense all season long with Joe Staley going out, the right tackle going out, Juszczyk going out, defensive players going out. This team is continue to fight through adversity and fight through injuries. I think they'll be fine, and I think he'll be a good quarterback against Arizona once again. It was only a couple weeks back where he threw 4 touchdowns against them. Moving on, Tampa Bay, very easy matchup for Drew Brees, Michael Thomas. Those two guys should dominate this weekend. The Oakland Raiders, obviously the matchup against Cincinnati is very easy. Ryan Finley could take advantage of it, but how much is he going to be able to take advantage of? I think he'll play okay, but he's definitely in line for some mistakes here and there, because that's just what rookies do. Moving on, the Atlanta Falcons, they're an easy matchup, so Kyle Allen could potentially have himself a big week. Cincinnati will be giving up a lot of points to Derek Carr and that Raiders offense for certain. The Detroit Lions are going to get destroyed by, especially if Matthew Stafford's not playing. The Detroit Lions are probably going to get worked by the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott and Zeke on the ground playing against one of the worst defenses in terms of against the running back position. Should be an easy matchup there. The Miami Dolphins giving up a lot of points. Josh Allen should be fine this week. The Houston Texans, Lamar Jackson should be killing it. The Giants on a bye week, and the Browns playing against Mason Rudolph tonight, Thursday Night Football. Should be a fun matchup. We'll see what Mason Rudolph's capable of. I think it's going to be more of a lean towards the running game with James Conner, Jalen Samuels kind of game, and then a couple passes here and there to the Washington, Deontay Johnson, and Juju Smith-Schuster. But again, I think it's more of a run-heavy, play defense kind of Steelers team. So that's probably what they'll lean upon. Moving on, in terms of the tougher matchups, the Carolina Panthers not giving up a lot of points to opposing quarterbacks. Matt Ryan with a couple weapons down is going to be hurting, right? You don't have Austin Hooper, you don't have Devontae Freeman, you don't have Mohamed Sanu. It is a tougher road ahead for Matt Ryan, but I think he'll be fine. I know he's still ailing from that ankle injury, and he's going to have to get through that, but eventually he'll be fine. The Baltimore Ravens, again, Deshaun Watson coming off a bye week, I think he'll be fine. I don't expect him to be the best quarterback on this week, but I expect him to at least be able to compete with another AFC contender, and I expect it to be a pretty good game between those two teams. Moving on, the Green Bay Packers are on a bye week. The Los Angeles Chargers are going to get torched by Patrick Mahomes. I don't care what the stat says. He's coming for blood. So they expect the Chargers defense to bleed this weekend. The Chicago Bears will probably take care of Jared Goff very easily. The Dallas Cowboys will take care of Jeff Driscoll pretty easily. The Denver Broncos, I'm sure, are going to make Kirk Cousins struggle to an extent because of the absence of Thielen. How Stephon Diggs is probably going to get locked down unless Kirk Cousins is finding Kyle Rudolph or somebody else in the passing game in the end zone. It's going to be tough for him to produce on this given week. And then the 49ers and the Patriots taking on a beat up offense for the Eagles, but hopefully they're going to key in on the run. But again, that's not going to help a guy like Carson Wentz. And then the 49ers will get their shot at Kyler Murray once again for the second time in 3 weeks. So we'll see how those go. Other than that, let's go ahead and let's talk about some quarterbacks on the week, shall we? All right, so here's the thing. Patrick Mahomes, the number one quarterback on the week, shouldn't be much of a surprise. Patrick Mahomes is as good as they get. I mean, plain and simple. Patrick Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks in terms of how much points per game he puts up. It's no surprise when he has these big plays. The amount of weapons that he has surrounding him are plenty. When you have two guys that can run sub 4.340s at times, you're just in line for just some insane production. The crazy thing that we saw last week is the amount of times that he was forced to have to throw the ball. I expect it to be an easier game for them, but I expect him to also score just as many points as he did last week. He should be fine, and he's my number one quarterback on the week for a reason. Because yes, the Chargers defense, they're good, right? They have good corners, and they always have. But Patrick Mahomes is a different animal, and trying to stop this offense is going to be quite the difficulty for the Chargers defense. All right, moving on. Lamar Jackson is my number 2 quarterback on the week, playing against the Houston Texans defense. Houston is pretty much a team that cannot stop the pass to an extent. Their corners, their safeties, they're a little beat up. They don't have J.J. Watt anymore. So as a whole, this defense is hurting. And they're going to continue to hurt this coming week when Lamar Jackson, when they have to go to Baltimore on top of it. They have to go to Baltimore and they have to take on Lamar Jackson, a guy that is completely dominating on all facets of the game. Last week, 15 for 17 passing, had 3 passing touchdowns, had a huge run on the ground. This is a guy that is absolutely unstoppable in terms of the NFL. I don't think anybody can truly stop him. The last time that he really struggled was against Pittsburgh's defense a couple weeks back, where he threw like 3 interceptions. That was the worst game that he had all season long. And since then, really hasn't had a huge struggle since. Hasn't really had a hiccup. He's been very consistent, whether it's on the ground or through the air. And as of right now, number 2 on the week, should be good to go. Moving on, Drew Brees, number 3, playing against Tampa Bay. Truly, I think Drew Brees could be the number 1 of the week. He should have been last week against the Atlanta Falcons, but he really did drop a terrible game on everyone. So, as of right now, just to be safe, maybe it's an offensive line issue. Hopefully, it's not, because if it's an offensive line issue, this defensive line, JPP, Ndamukong Suh, Shaq Barrett, they're going to get after them. They're going to put a lot of pressure on Drew Brees, and if that's the case, we could see some struggles again, but I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping we could see a pretty competitive game, and the Saints, take on this Tampa Bay defense and pull out a W. So Drew Brees right now, probably, he's in line for a 3-touchdown kind of game. That's what I'm expecting. So that's why I have him at my number 3 spot. All right, moving on. Let's talk about number 4, Dak Prescott, playing against the Lions. I think up and down the board, it's going to be a all Cowboys game this week. The Cowboys, they've struggled at times, but again, this offense needs to continue to run the ball in order to help open up for Dak Prescott. Last week they weren't able to really run the ball very well, which kind of hurt them at times. Dak Prescott was forced to have to make some plays here and there. But either way, Dak Prescott's been very consistent in the last couple of weeks in terms of, 3 touchdowns each of the last 2 weeks passing. Almost surpassed 400 passing yards this past week against Minnesota's defense. I don't think Detroit's defense is going to be able to stop them. I think they have a very easy matchup and should find some success here in week 11. He's my number 4 quarterback on the week. Moving on to number 5, Tom Brady. Tom Brady takes on the Eagles secondary. Again, like I mentioned every single week, the Eagles front 7 are very good. It's going to promote a more pass-heavy approach from the New England Patriots offense, which is absolutely fine. They're going to pass the ball, whether it's James White, Mahomes Sanu, Julian Edelman. It doesn't matter. Maybe even Philip Dorsett. I'm fine with either way. I expect Brady to come out after this bye week, have himself a pretty big win here, and put together himself a pretty good performance. I do not think that this secondary for the Eagles is good enough, and anytime Brady can get some revenge on a team that's beat him in the Super Bowl, he'll go ahead and take advantage of that. He's my number 5 on the week. Moving on to number 6, Deshaun Watson. Like I was mentioning earlier, Deshaun Watson takes on a pretty tough matchup. The Baltimore Ravens secondary has been very good. Bringing in Marcus Peters has been the best thing for them. He's been extremely good. I was seeing some comparisons and stats compared to Jalen Ramsey on the Rams and Marcus Peters on the Ravens. Marcus Peters is playing far better right now in terms of targets to receptions allowed, yards per reception, turnovers forced, touchdowns scored. This guy's been, getting to the end zone almost every week now since becoming a Baltimore Raven, and it's quite impressive. And I think that's going to hurt Deshaun Watson. This is a very good defense. Earlier on in the season, they struggled at times, especially against especially against offenses that weren't very elite. Late in games, they were getting torched. But I think they've kind of, tightened the screws. They're getting to their full elite form as the season progresses. And as of right now, I think Deshaun Watson's going to be, he's gonna struggle at times, but I think he'll still be able to produce like he always does. As of right now, he's the Michael Jordan of football. I don't know, man. That's just something people say. But either way, I think in terms of fantasy, he's a guy that you have to start every week, despite the matchup. So as of right now, he sits at number 6, and I'm pretty confident with that. All right, moving on to number 7, Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, good quarterback, plays against the Carolina defense. Carolina's defense is a little sketchy, right? I don't know what kind of approach Matt Ryan, this offense, is going to bring or provide or, try to attempt against Carolina's defense. But I do think no matter what they do, they should be able to succeed. I do not think that this Carolina defense is good enough to force Matt Ryan to struggle to an extent. Now, they did struggle last week offensively. They couldn't get the job done at the end of drives. A lot of young coups, kicks, were very consistent. Obviously, he made every single one of his kicks, but every time Matt Ryan came down the field, they weren't able to really get into the red zone and produce. They had to settle for field goals. That hopefully is not the case this week, despite how many injuries they're facing right now. But if in fact that's the case, and Matt Ryan is not able to get the job done, then he won't be as good of a quarterback as we expect him to be. That's why he sits at this number 7 spot. This is I expect you to at least have 2 passing touchdowns kind of section, to where Matt Ryan unless you're getting Julio Jones or Calvin Ridley hyper involved and you're feeding them 10 plus targets each and they're both catching the ball 8 to 10 times, hopefully, then you're going to struggle because the offense really revolves around that and getting that going. Because Brian Hill, sure, is going to be replacing Devontae Freeman, but I don't know how good this offensive line is to be able to open up holes for him to make plays. So, again, hopefully Matt Ryan's going to be in a shootout, and hopefully that's the case, because otherwise we could see some struggles. All right, moving on, especially because his ankle injury, all that jazz. All right, moving on. Number 8, Jameis Winston. So, Jameis Winston, always capable of throwing 3 interceptions every single game. We know this, okay? We know that for certain. But playing against the New Orleans Saints defense, in my opinion, as I see it right now, Jameis Winston is going to come out, and the only way that he can win this game truly is by just lighting up the scoreboard. He has to score 35-plus points on the scoreboard in order for them to at least compete or maybe even win this game, because Drew Brees in that offense is going to have a field day with the Tampa Bay defense and secondary. So Jameis Winston, every time he comes out, will have a huge opportunity. He's going to have to come out and he's going to have to put his best foot forward every single time in terms of, hey, I got to come out and I got to score every single drive. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble. In terms of, hold on, what was it? Yeah, the last time they played against New Orleans, he had 2 touchdowns, 200 passing yards. 2 of his interceptions that he threw were called back. He's going to throw an interception or 2. That doesn't scare me. What scares me is the fact that they could potentially disappear as an offense, because I haven't seen Godwin and I haven't seen, Mike Evans had big weeks, since week 9. That's scary. I don't want another disappearing game. I want something big. I want some big performances. Hopefully we're going to find that with Jameis at my number 8. All right, moving on. Let's talk about my number 9 through 16 quarterbacks on the week. Starting off with number 9, Josh Allen. Playing against Miami's defense should be perfectly fine. Miami's defense has looked better. That is for certain. But Josh Allen, again, will be able to take advantages. I do not have a problem with Josh Allen this week. I think he's a good quarterback start. This is his last great matchup from that slate of 5 games that we talked about earlier on in the season. This is the last one. So if, in fact, you're going to cash in on this very last game, go ahead, get it done. And then in the coming weeks, you obviously got to adjust, because he'll play against some tougher matchups. Denver, Dallas, Detroit, Pittsburgh, New England. Those are not games that you do not want to play Josh Allen into those games. They will be tough. So this is the last of his pretty good matchups. We'll see what he's able to produce off of that this week. All right, moving on. Number 10, Kyle Allen, taking on the Atlanta Falcons defense. Kyle Allen's a little sketchy because, yes, he surpassed 300 passing yards for the first time in his career last week, but a lot of this offense is dictated on Christian McCaffrey getting the ball and scoring, in the goal line, red zone area. And that doesn't really help Kyle Allen very much. Now, Kyle Allen has been good in terms of feeding the ball to DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Greg Olsen, but if in fact he's not able to get a higher scoring event, and they're really just force-feeding Christian McCaffrey the ball, especially on the ground, because of how bad this Atlanta Falcons defense could potentially be, we could see Kyle Allen disappear, only have 1 touchdown, and put up very minimal numbers comparatively to what he's capable or should be, potentially capable of doing against his defense. So as of right now, I'm a little, weary on him, but I do think Kyle Allen has a very, favorable matchup, and has been a pretty decent quarterback this year. So hopefully can turn the ship around a little bit, and instead of just helping the team win, maybe can have a big pop-off game for himself, similar to his first start when he played against the Cardinals many weeks back. He had a 4 passing touchdown game. I want to see more of that. Hopefully that's this kind of performance that we're going to see this week. All right, moving on. Derek Carr at my number 11 spot, taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Easy matchup. The Raiders offense, relatively healthy right now, should be good to go. All of his weapons surrounding him, whether it's Tyrell Williams, whether it's a guy like Darren Waller or Josh Jacobs, are going to feast this week, and I expect Derek Carr to be the leader of that offense and have himself a pretty good game. That's why he sits in my number 11 spot. Very easy matchup, and he should be able to take advantage of that. Moving on to number 12, we have Kirk Cousins. Again, like I talked about earlier, unless Kirk Cousins is going to be able to feed other guys like Dalvin Cook or Irv Smith, Kyle Rudolph, Olabisi, Treadwell, those are the guys that are going to have big games here against the Denver Broncos in order for them to win. I expect them to get it done. I understand this is going to be a tougher matchup for him, but again, Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. He has proven that thus far this season. And going into this week's matchup, sure, it's not the easiest one, but just looking at his stats in the last since week 5, 2 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 0 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns. No matter the defense, he continues to produce, and he's playing really well as of late. So as of right now, Kirk Cousins will sit on my number 12 spot. Moving on to number 13, Jimmy Garoppolo. I talked about Garoppolo earlier. Plays against the easiest matchup at the quarterback position. But, again, you're missing Sanders. You're missing Kittle. You're missing Breida. That's not a recipe for success. I do not believe that. Now, I understand the pieces that surround him. The Tevin Coleman's, Mostert's going to fill in. Deebo Samuel, Kendrick Bourne will fill in. A little bit of Dante Pettis. Ross Dwelly, he's going to fill in. I understand that, but they are not the elite level of talent that those 3 other guys that are going to be missing are. So it's going to hurt this offense to an extent. I still expect Jimmy Garoppolo to still have a good game, still be competitive, and still score and pass some touchdowns. So he'll still be good. He'll still be my number 13. I'm pretty confident with that. Moving on to number 14, Sam Darnold has put together 2 decent weeks. We want more. We want to see more. You've got a very easy schedule going forward. Hopefully against the Washington Redskins, can continue to take advantage of these easy matchups, continue to gain a rhythm within this offense, and really just produce. That's all we want you to do. Throw touchdowns and continue to produce. Obviously, last week was a lot better than the weeks prior, but again, it was an easier matchup against the Giants defense. I think the Redskins defense, same division, NFC East, there's many similar things to take advantage of. The secondary is not great. The front seven's not fantastic. They are going to be able to take advantage. I think Sam Darnold will be fine. I'm at number 14. Moving on to number 15, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, last time he played against the 49ers, had a big game. This entire Cardinals team had a big game, was very competitive, and they looked like they could have potentially won that game. But here's the thing about it. It was on a short week, and I do expect Kyler Murray to still be able to produce because he's going to be throwing the ball the entire game. That's for certain. He's going to be throwing the ball the entire game, but I expect him to struggle at times. They're going to throw the ball, 30-plus times, and he's been good as of late in the last couple weeks. In the last 2 weeks, he's thrown 5 touchdowns. Against Tampa Bay, sure, it was a far easier matchup, and all of his touchdowns went to Christian Kirk. They're going to probably shut down Christian Kirk, and they could potentially shut down a guy like Kyler Murray. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping that he can get his legs moving, be able to at least test his defense a little bit more by spreading them out, similar to how they did weeks past. And hopefully, Kyler Murray can have himself a good performance here. Otherwise, yikes. Moving on, let's talk about my number 16, the last quarterback on the week. There's a couple guys that I kind of thought about putting here. Nick Foles, obviously, is here, but I thought about also Jacoby Brissett. I thought about maybe Phillip Rivers. There are some guys that have good matchups, but I decided to go with Nick Foles because I really do think coming off the bye week needs to establish a big performance here. Sure, he might have some quote-unquote ring rust, but if he's healthy, he's ready to go. He's got a pretty good offense surrounding him, and I do think that Nick Foles is a good enough quarterback to produce and have himself a very good week here. So we'll see how this goes, but I'm rolling the dice on Nick Foles. If I had to go with him, Brissett or Phillip Rivers right now, I probably would go with Nick Foles as it stands. So anyway, thank you everybody for watching. Those are my top 16 rankings. Those were the week 11 quarterback starter sits for today's episode. Thank you everybody for watching. Later this afternoon, I will be putting out the tight end video. Also, Thursday Night Football. That should be fun. Get your lineup set. Get everything ready. Again, thank you everybody for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.